On the data side, I'll tell you why
Yeah.
data always is one of the issues in procurement predominantly is because there are a lot of contracts, a lot of suppliers, right? Whichever, whether you had
Yeah.
a manual process or an existing system, that you are moving from one way of doing it to another way. There's a legacy data, and usually this piece of work is not given enough importance. It's given to the guy who's sitting idle or somebody who doesn't have that knowledge or whatever, and it's just given to them with minimal instructions because it's a simple thing according to people. But a contract data is like your lifeblood, your nervous system of your entire procurement organization. If your contracts are not reported out right accurately, you're not having SLAs around it, you don't know who owns which contract, when it's going to expire, which supplier it's with, it's going to be a catastrophe. It's like a multiple organ failure in an
Yeah.
organization.
Thanks so much for joining another edition of The Never Ending Climb for a Stronger Supply Chain and Procurement for Companies Running SAP. With us today, we have the pleasure of Karthik joining us. He is the procurement doctor, and he offers procurement as a service, implementing, tuning, Ariba, and other procure-to-pay solutions. And he's grown his business through word of mouth based on just he's known for loving procurement and his values around trust and transparency and customer centricity. So Karthik, so grateful for you to join us today and bring your experience.
Hey, John, it's a pleasure to be on the show.
Thanks so much. So, for one thing, that background that you've got, float like a butterfly, sting like a bee, and this idea of knowing that you've got to be able to quickly diagnose what's going on so that you can get on to helping people with that. Can you share with the audience here what are the most common ailments that you diagnose and how do you diagnose them?
Yeah, that's a loaded question. So I'll give it a few minutes and explain a little more in detail. The common ailments, like similar to what we've had, right, in human history, the different ailments as a human anatomy is, and the few things that are lingering that will keep going on, and you don't know how to fix it. Similarly, we have issues in procurement as well. But as a doctor, right, as a doctor does, before he jumps to a conclusion and gives you the medicine or starts a surgery, you got to diagnose, to ensure that you're thoroughly checking the entire process, right, the person itself by understanding. So I basically go with this four-way method. One is we diagnose through people. That means we need to talk to the people, and then we have process. We check the process. We have technology and then data. The people perspective, we basically, it's not just us talking to the leadership, the people who are going to pay your invoice and let it go with, keep them happy, do as they say. We basically need to show a mirror and give them a reality check. If it's a smoker, you got to tell him it's okay, reduce your smokes. That's not going to work, You got to tell him you got to shut up, or else you're going to die very soon. You got to give them that reality check. Similarly, in procurement as well, there are too many leaders who are so sure that they're doing the right thing because they've been doing it for too long. So sometimes you need a person from outside with a fresh set of eyes to give you a reality check. So not just the leadership, you got to go to the bottom guys because they're the ones who are going to use the system or the process that you're building in the future. So you got to check with them, understand, give them the trust that what their feedback is going to come of some use. There's going to be some fixing that's going to happen from the people process. So the people side, we could do a survey, you could have interviews, dialogue, Wilo approach. It's very famous, right? Sitting for a day with that person and don't trouble them, just listen and
Yeah.
then make notes and then come back and digest it. So I use those methods.
That is so amazing because that is something that a lot of people don't ask to go do. And that idea of ask for what you need to be successful, so important. But the empathy that you gain, the understanding when you go sit with somebody and the process is this and they're doing these other 12 things, you go, hey, why are you doing that? Oh, because this part doesn't work.
That's right. That's how you uncover.
And that you'll never hear that without sitting and watching them.
Absolutely. Even the document that they prepared, right? So one is for the doctor, you need to have the blood report, the BP report, your heart fitness test, whatever, right? Depending on what the leadership wants. What leadership wants a six-pack app, but they don't want to run, right? They want a shortcut, right?
Yeah.
So depending on what they need, you need to get all the details. So I need the last year's audit report, whoever audited you, the internal audit report. I need your spend report. I need any other
Yep.
quality issues that you've had, right? So because that's like your heart report or whatever, which should tie to what people are saying. That's the reporting standpoint. And then we have a process. We got to check the process. From the people comes the process, like you said. They're doing an extra 12 things on Excel sheet, on Word document, or because this IT category works different. I'm a special Sally. I do different, or I'm not like the other guys, or whatever may be the case. So you have different process. And then from there, from people, from process, is the process, what level of maturity is your process? You think you're world class because you did it for 30 years, but you still are using ink signatures on your contracts, or you're still sending the contract on email. You rather use the pigeon method
Yep.
to send the contract if you want to, right? If you did that for 30 years, you think that's the
Yeah.
best way to do it. But you got to learn,
Yeah.
evolve. You got to understand where you stand today and where you want to get to in the future.
Please, with your 30 years of experience, don't hit me with your fax machine.
That's fine. So if you did the same thing for long enough, you think it's the right thing, right? Back in the day, that's how
Yeah.
things worked, and unfortunately, that happens a lot still, in a lot of ways. So people process, and then we have technology. Now, people, if you ask people, is your technology working? Usually, on the technology side, people are ready to bitch about it, talk a lot about how it's not helping them, and point every problem to the technology. But it's not the case in a lot of occasions. No? If I just looked at the technology and gave them a solution, I would be wrong. And again, they will talk ill things about the technology I implemented in the future. That's why we need to have a holistic approach as a doctor. And finally,
Yep.
data, Sean. We cannot talk enough of data because in this world, we're talking about AI, technology, the latest and the greatest things and all that. But most people are blinded to the quality of data that they have. If I ask what's the quality of a data for your leadership, they're like, it's world class.
Whoa, well, don't
No,
maybe.
they usually think it's
Yeah.
doing very great. And then I ask, when was the last
Uh-oh.
time you saw it? 5 years ago.
That's called a hallucination. Yeah,
When was
that's called a hallucination.
Absolutely. And when you ask, when was the last time you checked it? They checked it 5 years ago when they implemented. That's the last time they checked it.
Yeah.
After that, they haven't had any rules revamp, any drop down updates or cleansing of master data or new acquisition. Nothing of that kind, right? And they want to have a data lake and do the best things without proper data. So I give this holistic report. Out of this, like for a customer, I would give them a rating depending on. So few people predominantly want their P2P to be fixed, right? They're not focusing on the other areas. So in the P2P side,
Yep.
I would come up with potential solutions like where they have maverick spending, what's not going through the system, what is the exception piece. So there are different areas. I have clients where the entire leadership was sacked because they had corrupt activities that were happening, right? And it's a big company; they cannot let it out in public as well. They would have a reputational risk. So I was called in. They called in a big four company. They sucked up all the money. They gave all the findings, but there was no way to execute it, right? And they didn't know,
Oh yeah.
and the leadership was sacked. Now they brought me in as an interim CPO or whatever you may want to call for the next 3 months, who would help with the hiring, set up the process, suggest them a technology, and then go ahead and drive that through for the next 1 year. I was taken on special consulting basis. So that's something I've seen. I've been called on a lot of second opinions as well, Sean, where there was another doctor who diagnosed wrong, or they wanted to do. The leadership was, I want this to be done quick because it's the end of the year, and I want to finish this project before that, or else I'll not. I'll have to take an extension on the budget. And then somebody did some job and they left, and then they called me back and they're like, "Can you please check and tell me if we go in the right direction?" And then, like the second opinion doctor, I come back many times on QC or whatever may be the case.
I love that because there's so many organizations that have somebody that came in and they made a recommendation of here's your 4-year transformation roadmap for your procurement. It's only $80 million. My quick answer for that is run, because the only company that's really going to have a lot of value coming out of that is usually the big company that pitched the $80 million. That is one of the pieces where if you cannot break it down into smaller bite-sized pieces that add incremental value that start to fund the rest of the program on its own, there's something really, really wrong. And I love when somebody can come in and challenge some of the assumptions and find the bite-sized wins, because I know that when somebody comes in and says it's going to be 2 years and $80 million, there's a lot of assumptions and there's a lot of stuff all moving around. And it's very, very difficult to come back and measure some of that stuff. And I think that sometimes there's a comic from a long time ago where the accounting troll comes up and says, hey, we need a new accounting system because our system's so bad you could manage randomly and claim success. And then the boss hugs the accounting troll, and the accounting troll says, hey, I was looking for funding, not a hug. But depending on which leader you're working with or which consulting style you're working with, some of them will say, hey, here's how we're going to help you. I have seen over and over, I bet you have too, that the people that win and get the most value are the ones that take the bite-sized chunks and it's towards a broader vision. But the broader vision shifts a little bit as you're going through it, because trying to blueprint that big of a thing usually is too big for individual brains, and it's the organization is so big that it's spread out amongst too many people, and the collaboration is damn near impossible to get good enough to really realize the value. The other thing that you were talking about was the audit. And there's a lot of people that are scared of audit. And I wish that wasn't the case. I know there's some audit practitioners that come in like they're all this or something. The best audit teams are your partner. And I love that you ask for the audit report, because that is something that not enough people do. The audit team can really help you uncover some of the things that are genuinely missed. And I wish more people like you would ask for those audit reports when you come in. Some people try to hide them because they feel like they're embarrassed or it's something that shouldn't get out there. But that's the quickest way to not actually address the turd on the table, the elephant in the
Yep.
room.
I'll tell you what. I've been so I do a few trial diagnostic assessments as well, and then basis of the report, they either pay me or they give me the implementation, right? Depending on the assessment I've done. So I do such kicks as well. Usually, when I start asking about audit reports or compliance reports, they say we got to sign an NDA now because they worried that everybody in the world might get to know how bad or what the state of their business process is. It should not be shied upon. It should be looked at front on, and you got to face them. Only then you'll be able to fix them. You got to talk about them openly and honestly, and you got to be transparent with it. Only
Yeah.
then you'll be able to fix it, right? If you're trying to hide it, it's not going to help.
If nobody talks about Bruno, you can't fix it. You can't make it better. You got to talk about the real problem. I love that. Thank you. I hope if people watching this episode take nothing else away, you got to talk about the real problem and call it out and address it. Sometimes that means some people's feelings get hurt or they start feeling insecure, but you can't fix something if you can't genuinely address it. So thank you for bringing that. I know the other thing that you talked about is the garbage in, garbage out, and the quality of the data. And, I call that the hallucinations, because there's people that hallucinate that their data is better than it really is. And you try to open up the covers and you go, wow, we don't have some of the basic classifications or some of the basic information that you need. So thank you for helping highlight that and how important it is. Here's the other piece that I love is you can feel the passion that you're bringing and the empathy with that understanding of digging deep for what really matters. And to me, that's one of the most important ingredients on the never-ending climb, to leave things better than they were before. So I love that you are bringing that dig deep and get into the people, because the technology is easy. The process isn't too bad, but the people can be tricky. And when you really dig into what matters to them, then you can go and unpack what's missing down the line, either the data, the process, the tech, the easier stuff.
Yep.
And not enough people get into here's how the people really need to work with it. That comes from the heart. That comes from caring about the people and understanding what can make it better. Thank you.
Lots of cuts and bruises,
What?
Sean. Trying to do it as well. You have a lot of
Yeah.
cuts and bruises, a lot of falling, a lot of battles,
Yeah.
and I just wanted to bring a little bit up on the data element that you've spoken, right? That's passion just pouring out. On the data side, I'll tell you why
Yeah.
data always is one of the issues in procurement predominantly is because there are a lot of contracts, a lot of suppliers, right? Whichever, whether you had
Yeah.
a manual process or an existing system, that you are moving from one way of doing it to another way. There's a legacy data, and usually this piece of work is not given enough importance. It's given to the guy who's sitting idle or somebody who doesn't have that knowledge or whatever. And it's just given to them with minimal instructions because it's a simple thing according to people. But a contract data is like your lifeblood, your nervous system of your entire procurement organization. If your contracts are not reported out right accurately, you're not having SLAs around it. You don't know who owns which contract, when it's going to expire, which supplier it's with. It's going to be a catastrophe. It's like a multiple organ failure in an
Yeah.
organization, and I get a lot of
Yeah.
mistakes. As a part of my 20-year experience, me and my team have cleansed close to 40,000 plus contracts till now. It's a repeated issue that most of my clients go about. So they go in the haste to deploy it, and then they don't do a good job at this, and then they're suffering it because the fun of using the tool is no longer fun because the data is messed up. So you don't get the essence of what the tool has as features or value that it's giving, and everybody's dissatisfied, and then they blame it on the tool. So this keeps happening over and over
Uh,
again.
to me, that's the difference between context and control. Sometimes people mix up control with there's only one way to do it in the tool without providing the context of how and why it matters. The best teams are bringing the context and the tool together so that the context and the wizard makes it so easy to do it right that it's hard to do it wrong. And that's a very, very different way of thinking about it. And I'm hearing you talk about the same thing.
Yep.
Karthik, if you have one thing that you hope everybody that's watching this can remember 6 weeks, 6 months later, what's one thought or powerful question that you wish more people could hold in their mind when they're looking at their procurement problems?
So question the status quo. Don't be a yes man, right? And we've had enough yes mans. We have enough of people not questioning enough, right? It's a simple thing, but it holds of a great strength. It brings, if you question, we're not saying don't bash on regardless. Like if you question something, enough knowledge or understanding around it to raise a question and then learn from it. If you're and be ready to accept it was a wrong question, or if it was you were wrong, right? You learn from it. Become a better person, or at least you learn something new or different way of doing it, or you would change the thing. Don't just blindly go
Yeah.
ahead with the status quo, or else you'll be the peer pushers. You'll be the guy who's storing the contract forever. And we don't want that anymore. We
Yeah.
got multiple tools, technologies that are doing this. And you got to level up yourself. Procurement has to level up in 2024. And this is one way of leveling up things. Uh, and you learn
Yeah.
by raising questions. So the Indian culture, Sean, if you go from divulging into mythology, the Hinduism, the Hindu culture, it's always one god asking the other god, husband was asking the wife multiple questions. And then our books are telling what the question was and what the answer was. So we're learning through that. So I would say you question more, you learn more from the answers. So that's one thing I would suggest.
That's beautiful. I love that. I believe that on our never ending climb, when you seek to understand how you're adding value and you seek to understand how the organization works and seek to understand, that curiosity is priceless. And I know that'll serve everybody that watched. Karthik, thank you so much for watching. If people want to find you, what's the best way for somebody to find you to seek out your advice, help, and wisdom?
So my wife keeps yelling at me because I'm too much on LinkedIn. So you could just search me by Karthik Rama, Procurement Doctor on LinkedIn. And I'm always on DM, always responding to comments. Um, and that's one way. You have my email as well. I'll give it to Sean. He'll put it in the show notes so you can reach out to me when I'd like to. I'm a little bit on Twitter, a little bit on YouTube, everywhere, but predominantly LinkedIn,
Yep.
right?
Amazing. And when you're looking for somebody that can help you level up your SAP procurement supply chain with the #1 add-on, you know who to call. Thank you so much, everybody. Have an amazing week. This is another edition of the Never Ending Climb for a Stronger Supply Chain and Procurement for companies running SAP. Thanks, everybody.